Private investigator Paul O'Sullivan was back in court today on charges of contravening the Immigration Act after he was found at Oliver Tambo Airport in April with dual passports, arrested by the Hawks after a tip-off from the Department of Home Affairs. Immigration law expert Gary Eisenberg joins us in studio this afternoon to weigh in on what he's calling selective enforcement of the law. Gary, thank you very much for coming back to our studio. And first of all, tell us why Paul O'Sullivan was arrested.
There is an arcane provision of the Citizenship Act, Section 26B, not the Immigration Act, but the Citizenship Act that was added relatively recently, which says that a South African citizen cannot use a passport of a foreign jurisdiction to exit or enter South Africa, and can't use a foreign passport to evade any kind of legal obligation in South Africa. What Mr. O'Sullivan purportedly did was to use an Irish passport in trying to exit South Africa while being a South African citizen. And this is deemed by the South African government to be a flagrant violation of Section 26B. That is really the legal basis for this massive storm in a teacup.
Okay. Now, why do you feel that this is selective enforcement of this law, and is there precedent for this?
Well, I'm not familiar with any other court case, especially one that has been so explosive as this has been, where a South African, sometimes not really knowing what the law is, has an expired South African passport. Let's say a South African living outside the country for many years, not having a valid South African passport, but remaining a South African citizen all the while, and using a foreign passport to enter South Africa. If passport control at the airport, for example, realizes that the South African citizen is not using a South African passport, a warning may be given. But the point is that our constitution is very clear. A South African citizen has the right to enter and remain in South Africa until the end of his or her days. It's a constitutional right to enter South Africa, even on a foreign passport, whilst being a South African citizen. So there seems to be a little bit of a conflict, perhaps a fundamental conflict between Section 26B and our Constitution.
So political motivation then has been cited for this arrest. Do you want to tell us a bit more about that?
Well, this is anecdotal, obviously. The press has been reporting O'Sullivan's threat to expose the linkage between our President Zuma and the Gupta family as a consequence of his departure for the United Kingdom. In the United Kingdom, he threatened to hold a press conference. Now, many people have been decrying the relationship between the president, or the purported relationships between the president and his family and the Gupta family and their various business interests. And none of those individuals have been hunted down. So I'm not so certain whether this is the foundation for this heavy-handedness, this heavy-handed selective enforcement of Section 26B, coming down very hard on Mr. O'Sullivan. There must be far more than meets the eye.